I know you take dutasteride. What do you do for testosterone, DHT, estradiol, and what do your levels run of those?
So another steroid that I take is, so I guess I'll start. The largest on a weekly basis, the most grams of an anabolic substance I consume
One
is
gram of an anabolic steroid?
over 1 gram. It's 35 grams per week.
Oh,
And
35 gram per week anabolic.
It's not as well heard of. It starts with a C. Can you take a guess?
Carnosine?
Creatine.
Carnitine. Oh, creatine. Oh, okay. Well, that doesn't count. That's not very exciting.
It's anabolic. It seems to improve lean muscle mass, exercise recovery. The more often you can resistance train and recover, the more lean mass you can put on. And I'm a lean mass connoisseur, a lean mass enthusiast, one of those two.
Not a lean hyperresponder, but a lean mass hyperresponder. And I guess you're too young to get the cognitive benefits, so you're literally just taking this for vain purposes.
Pretty much, yeah. And it doesn't seem to help younger people cognitively. The older you are, the more you stand to benefit. Yep. Probably from an anabolic standpoint too, I would have to guess.
Yeah, I noticed that our friend Derek was talking with Peter about carnitine. He said it was the top over-the-counter supplement that added in for most people, and I'd probably agree. But one thing that I thought was interesting is they said maybe not in certain populations like cyclists and runners, but I know there's lots of studies on creatine in cyclists and runners. Most of the weight gain, like I think something was said, they said, you don't want to be 5 pounds heavier as a runner, but after a while you're on creatine, you're not going to be, 5 or 10 pounds heavier. And most of the studies specifically in runners show that times do not slow when you take creatine.
Yeah, and I've talked with people about this. If they do happen to, let's say, gain more water weight or they get a little bit of trace edema on creatine, there's certainly a few people out there that does happen to. You can still benefit from recovering from your training faster and then pull your creatine out like a week out from the race. I think track and field athletes do this with other anabolics that cause water weight gain all the time.
Yep. So that is certainly a thing that you can consider. Also, keep in mind that the harder you're training, creatine can also help with the recovery aspect quite a bit as well. So there's a lot of benefits. The next item on your list I was pretty surprised to see and might be least expected in an anabolic stack, and a lot of people might be missing it.
Yeah, omega-3s. And I calculated this out, 12.88 grams per week. So I don't take an exorbitant amount of omega-3s. I take a fish oil capsule that is pure DHA, 1,000 milligrams, and then I take 1 omega-3 ethyl ester, mainly just because it's the cheapest one to take that has a high amount of omega-3 in it. And that gives me about a 3-to-1 ratio of DHA to EPA. I do have a, not first-degree relative, but a distant history of AFib in my family history. And I don't really see the need to push my EPA levels high. I don't know this for sure, but I certainly hope that I don't need antiplatelet therapy. I don't think I have a significant stenosis at this point in my life. So that's my omega-3 stack. And I
what about
guess
those
it's
triglycerides of 550 though?
I guess it's more anti-catabolic than it is anabolic. But the way I frame it as anabolic is that omega-3s also improve recovery between bouts of exercise. So, if you're able to approach, each set or each training session with a little bit more intensity and get more out of it, over time, that's going to be net anabolic. It seems like there's a consistent theme here where you are actually having to train to get the anabolic benefits.
Yeah, that is often the case, although science is doing its best to find a way around that because people don't like to train. Like you said, if you could put exercise in a medication and give it to people, then that'd be fantastic. Maybe replacing hormone deficient states is the closest-ish thing to that. But you said DHA, not DHEA. So what we really want to hear about is the steroids. Tell us about the steroid hormones.
Steroids. So this one, it's a microdose in the grand scheme of things compared to the grams and grams of creatine that I'm taking.
1 DHEA?
I'm not taking grams and grams of steroid hormones per week. I take less than 1 milligram of vitamin D3 per week.
So less than 1 milligram, like how many thousand IUs is that? Is this 125 micrograms, like 0.1?
This is 5,000 IUs daily, so 35,000 IUs weekly.
Okay.
That keeps me floating somewhere between 60 and 70 usually. Crossing that threshold above 50, that does seem to have some benefits that are above and beyond what you get from just going from let's say a vitamin D insufficient state or deficiency to a sufficient state. So if you go from 15 to 31, that's probably a good thing. But going specifically for athletes, going from, let's say, I probably would have a normal vitamin D, not taking any. I would probably be hovering 30, 40, something like that. But you take a person like that, or like myself, and you push the level up above 50, and you see a couple of improvements in some studies, and the data is mixed. It's not a home run for vitamin D, but you can see some improvements in things like vertical jump or isometric strength. And it comes back to, with training, if you're able to do that with a little bit more intensity and something that is consistently monitored 3 to 4 times a year, so I'm not getting a vitamin D toxicity that I don't know about. This is important because vitamin D3 is a fat-soluble vitamin, and it's also in a microgram dose. If you look at I think 5,000 IUs is 125 micrograms. So there was actually a case of a vitamin D toxicity that was published. And I think, just going off the top of my head here, I think the woman taking this, there was a mix-up at the factory, and she was actually taking something like 200,000 IUs per day.
Oh, wow.
It was just mislabeled because something with the quality control.
Did she get jacked, huge biceps?
She did not. She got a lot of calcium in her blood and less in her bones, I assume, and was hospitalized.
I wonder what her PTH was. Anyway, off topic, we'll talk about things that you guys are more interested in. I know you take dutasteride. What do you do for testosterone, DHT, estradiol, and what do your levels run of those?
So another steroid that I take is testosterone cypionate, 120 milligrams per week, divided into 3 injections. I don't do every other day. It's more difficult to keep track of. Just do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 40 milligrams each. And that keeps my total testosterone levels around 800. My DHT levels are basically as low as I can get them. Last time they were less than 5 when I checked them.
Wow.
Estradiol.
Do things work?
Yes, they do.
Just asking the questions that people are going to type in the comments.
Yes.
Because somebody's going to be commenting, I have never met a male on a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor or with a low DHT that doesn't have anxiety and no sexual function.
People do like to type things like that.
So I guess let's compare your regimen, which is basically 0.2 mils or 40 mgs 3 times a week with dutasteride. I don't know how high your estradiol runs, or actually I do, but let's compare this regimen with somebody else. I know there's a lot of people, Andrew Huberman, Derek with More Plates, More Dates. A lot of people kind of are in this, every other day or 3 times a week, 30 to 40 mg category. How would you assess the anabolic potential off or on the dutasteride?
Yeah, I think that the anabolic potential is basically a wash in terms of like the same testosterone level and 0 DHT versus a DHT of 100, unless you're someone who is going to get a lot of motivation from that and you feel amped up and you're going to push yourself harder in your workouts because of that. Yep. That's the only sort of way I could think of DHT of being significantly anabolic. I know there are a couple of studies out there showing DHT and its impact on muscle growth or testosterone plus dutasteride and maybe slightly decreased muscle growth, some with null results where it looks like it doesn't have an effect one way or the other. Yep. But if you're looking at the same milligram dose of testosterone or the same, like let's say someone who's not suppressed, someone not taking exogenous testosterone, you're probably going to see about a 10% increase in your total testosterone. Yep. So I think that shifts you to a slightly more net anabolic, but not a more androgenic ratio.
Yeah, I guess another rule of thumb that people could use is if you are having deficient levels of total testosterone, 250 and below, then you probably don't want to consider adding dutasteride for anabolic potential or whatnot, and your likelihood of side effects is going to be higher. But if you have normal testosterone levels, then it's certainly a case-by-case addition. I'll try not to talk about it anymore because we've done lots of podcasts on it, but I did note that you left out dutasteride, which is basically a DHT steroid hormone-looking molecule. So
it is a testosterone analog because it fits into the 5-AR enzyme very nicely.
Yeah. So,
but it doesn't fit into the aromatase enzyme.
Yeah. Very conveniently.
So it is a testosterone analog, but it's very specific for 5-AR.
Yeah. So more of an androgen than an estrogen, although it's estrogenic. It's a little bit of a paradox.
It is. And there's a very nice chart outlining the percentages of the anabolics that I consume in a week.